Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode with Catching with Kyle. Today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. I'm going to be showing you how to find and repair your kayak leak. But yeah, I'm going to go step by step. Disclaimer, I'm not a professional plastiwelder. I'm sure there's a lot of people that can do a lot better job than I can, but what I do, it gets the job done. You know, it works. Some of my jobs have held for a year before I have to redo them. But I hope you find this episode informative and useful for you in case you ever have an issue that pops up. A lot of people when they get kayaks, they don't realize the amount of effort it takes to keep it going, keep it in top shape. I guess, you know, you can always go buy another one if you really wanted to, but some of us aren't really in that position to do so. So if you like this video, make sure you give me a like and a thumbs up. Leave a comment down below if you have any questions about my setup or any of my gear or any of my tools. So we'll jump into it. Alright y'all, so this is basically what you're going to need to do this job. You know, you can probably get by with more, get by with less, but what you will need is you're going to need a heat gun. I mean, you could use a soldering iron if you really wanted to. You could get one of those flat iron heads, and they'd be pretty good about patching up a real small crack. But if you're making a large repair, it's going to take too long, too much effort. You're also going to need something to sand with. I mean, you can use your elbow grease, but you know, an orbital sander goes a lot faster. You're going to need some alcohol, some rubbing alcohol. You're going to need some denatured alcohol. Help clean your surfaces, make sure there's no contaminants on them when you're going to put on your new plastic. When you're going to find your leak, you're going to need some water, but you're going to need to put a few drops of soap in it. Now, you don't want it nice and bubbly. You don't want it like you're doing dishes. You're going to need to keep it, you know, the bubbles down. You just want a little bit of bubbles in there so you know you have enough detergent. Because what's going to happen if you have too many bubbles in there and you start looking for your leak, you could probably tell, but I imagine there's some times where there's so many bubbles you might not be able to see it, especially a small leak. So you're going to want to keep it pretty calm before you use it. I also like to use drywall patching when I'm doing this, just to make sure that I have a nice reinforcement for the plastic to really bond to. It should be bonding to the plastic itself of the hull of the kayak, but on larger repairs where you need to fill a gap, that extra reinforcement helps a lot in my opinion. I'm going to need a little bit of tape so I can tape up where I'm going to attach the hose to help find the leak. Just a towel to help me rub down some spots, and I've got some strips of high density polyethylene HDPE that I took from a 5-gallon bucket. I just took a Dremel to it. You could use shears and cut pieces off. I like to cut them in small thin strips. They melt a lot faster and they're a lot easier to work with. If you get like a big chunk, your hull is going to cool down too much. One of the sides of the pieces, like, see, this is going to be a more difficult piece because it's a little bit thicker right here. It's going to take a little bit longer for that to heat up compared to the thinner side, so it can make repairing a little bit more difficult. And you're going to need something to roll with. I believe this is also high density polyethylene, but it'll stay cool enough to where when I put down the surface, the new plastic, I can roll it and kind of get any kind of air pockets out of it. As you can see down here, I also have a hose so I can, you know, I use it to spray down the kayak, get any dirt off of it from my recent trips, and I'm going to use it to help cool down the plastic when I'm done. I got my shop vac here to help me look for the leaks, and I'll go over that in a second. And of course, trusty pliers. They'll come in real handy when I'm melting these, because you do not want to touch this when they're hot, when you're heating them up. The heat will spread throughout the whole piece of plastic. You can't just hold the end and do it unless you got tougher fingers than I do, which admittedly I don't have very tough fingers. That's something else to keep in mind when you're heating up your plastic. It doesn't take a whole lot. You can melt a good bit of your plastic on your hull if you're not careful, because the heat can spread. Alright, so now I'm going to try to find the leak. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to remove the drain plug. I set it off to the side. It pops right out, no biggie. And I've already plugged in my shop vac. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I've got it on the below and not suck side. Insert funny little hook there, hook. Leave us some butt head. And make sure that it's not blowing out any junk. Because you don't want that junk getting up inside your kayak. You don't need to have it there. And it is blowing pretty good. You don't need to be pushing 5,000 cubic feet per minute to have this figure this out. So we're going to come over here, we're going to take the hose, and I got the Gorilla Tape. You put the hose over the drain plug, and then you're going to secure it in place. Make sure you get a nice tight seal. That way you get as much air going through the hull of your kayak as possible, so you can find even the smallest leak. Alright, let's flip her on her side and see what we can't find. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I have done repairs on my kayak before, and they're starting to wear out a little bit, and I think I can tell where it's coming out of. I probably actually have to make a couple patches today. I'm going to turn on the vacuum now, and we'll see, once we pour some water on it, where the leak's coming from. Take my soapy water and then pour over all the areas that get a lot of contact with the ground or any areas that I'm suspicious of. As you can see right there, we were getting bubbles. I'm getting some from the back, the side, and that little hole right there. You can tell after dragging it across the ground for a while, it really does eat up the hull. We're definitely getting a leak there. Well, let's test on the other side. And nope, there's a little one right there. It's just sputtering a little bit of water. I'm actually going to lay down the kayak now, and you can do this to test for leaks on top of your deck. So all you got to do is you just got to pour this on your deck and watch for bubbles form. Yep, you see down there, right there in the corner, there's a leak there. I knew about that leak, and there actually looks like there's another leak right on this side too. It's definitely bubbling. These aren't too big of an issue. It only becomes an issue if it's pouring down the rain and water stands on top of here. It'll get down through and get into your hull. If you're standing a lot, especially on this model kayak, water comes up through these scupper holes and will get down there. So if you're standing all day, fishing all day, you can get a lot of water through your hull from the top. But it's not too much of a concern right now. It's a bit of a pain to get underneath there to repair those, and there's not a whole lot you can do for those. I did have a crack back here somewhere. I don't remember exactly where, but it was pretty significant. And I did have to repair that because when I was standing up, it forced the plastic to flex and water was pouring in there, a good bit of it. But that's not something I'm worried about today. What I really need to work on is the parts that are actually under the water, absorbing water into the hull. All right, y'all. Now it's time to prep the work area. So I'm just going to do the one side for the video, the big major one, this one up here on top. The first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to prep it. And it's going to take a little bit of sanding. Make sure I get a good view for you all. And what the sanding does is it creates little scuffs. It creates little scuffs on the plastic, so your plastic can bond to it a little bit better. It also helps get rid of some of the contaminants. I'm going to do that off camera and get that over and done with. It takes a minute. You don't have to do it real hard. It doesn't take a whole lot. No, I'll be right back. So I just went ahead and removed the old patch. It was a little flimsy anyway, and getting some rocks underneath of it kind of jarred it up. It just means that I'm going to have to get this plastic a little bit hotter the next time I do this. That way it bonds more securely. You can see where this is pretty much one piece of plastic right here. That means their temperatures are about the same when I pushed them together, and they held up real well. I kind of did this job in haste. You know, haste makes waste, and I definitely wasted some plastic. Now I'm going to clean it up. A little bit of denatured alcohol or rubbing alcohol, whatever you have. It just helps get some of these contaminants off there so you can get a better bond. One thing to remember is a lot of times when it gets real thin like this, when you heat it up, it's going to heat up a lot quicker than the thicker plastic, so it'll deform, and it cools down a lot quicker. So you got to be ready with your plastic. You know, you got to time it right. You can't get it too hot because it'll melt and just fall through, which causes another issue, which is fixable. Now, one thing you got to make sure you do, especially if you're using a 5-gallon bucket like I am, it has contaminants in it. You can see how they're pretty dirty still. We're going to need to take that alcohol and we're going to have to clean these up a little bit. Now that I've got that done, I have the drywall patching, and I'm just going to kind of see how much am I going to need to get a good cover on this. So a pretty fair amount. Doesn't need to be super accurate. You want to make sure you have enough to stick to the sides that you can work with, but enough for the plastic to stick to. Now you don't want to put that on first because you're going to be heating up that plastic. When you're doing that, you can burn your patching, and it's not a good result because the stickiness will dry up and it gets real weak. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our heat gun, we're going to put it on the low setting, which is still really hot. And we're just going to slowly heat up the hull. Make sure I don't burn my leg. We're going to heat it up to where it starts looking a little shiny. It starts to sweat a little bit. Sometimes you can see, especially when it's real thin, it'll start deforming a little. Now we're going to apply our patch. A little hot, so you don't need to touch it too long. My patching didn't work out. I've done it before, but it's just too loose. It's not sticking. Alright, y'all. I had to move this job inside my garage because it got way too windy out there. My patching actually blew away. I don't think it's gonna stick. There's not much stick to it anymore. But layering the HDPE, but this will work regardless of the patching. What was happening was my plastic was getting so cooled off so quickly I couldn't get it to stick. The hull was cooling down, the plastic was cooling down too quick. So hopefully you all can get a good view. Just gonna make sure that the hull stays warm. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to heat this up until it starts wanting to drip. I'm going to drip it onto the hole. So quickly after doing that, we're going to cool it down. I'm going to just kind of try to shape it a little bit, smoothing it out. Hope you all can see that okay. There was a bubble forming right there, but we've been able to take this roller and work it out a little bit. Now I'm going to pour some water on it from the hose. Cool it down so it sets, and then we'll test it again. We'll see if there's more of a leak and we can work on it. So here's the big test. Looks like a little one right there. Alright, y'all. So I cut another piece, and I'm gonna finish filling this in. That should do it. Now we're going to cool it off. Whew. For the final test. No bubbles. Alright, so now the easy part. We're just going to sand it down a little bit, make it a little smooth. I mean, it'll be okay, honestly, as it is. I mean, we're not going for, you know, Olympic records or anything. Yeah, you just want to make sure there's no spots that'll stick up that a rock can get underneath and pry up some of it. Alright, that's pretty good. Alright guys and gals, well, I hope that gives you an idea of what goes into finding and repairing a leak on your kayak, so hopefully you can do it at home for yourself as well. Remember, if you like this video, please subscribe and give me a thumbs up. Thank you all for watching. Take care.